Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inspired and Empowered Living TV show and podcast. We are live Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern on talk4tv.com, w4wn.com, and my YouTube channel. And today we are continuing where we left off. So we're going to be continuing to talk about the power of your voice. Communicate with confidence, clarity, and compassion. Are you ready to live an inspired and empowered life? I'm your host, Nanci Deutsch, licensed clinical social worker, certified hypnotherapist, and intuitive business coach. And today, we're going to continue to talk about really being able to understand the power of your voice and how the power of your voice really it is the most important thing when you're in communication. And communication is essential in every area of your life. And so we're going to explore more about effective communication and what would keep you from having that effective communication with confidence, clarity, and compassion. And there's a part of me that wants to say conviction, the C's. And also know this is not a replacement for therapy or counseling. It is for educational purposes only. So last time we were talking about fear of judgment, and we were talking about lack of clarity. And I want to go deeper into both of those because both of those issues will and do affect your ability to clearly communicate with confidence and clarity and compassion. And so when you have the fear of judgment, and the fear of judgment is what happens is you end up getting re-triggered from past experiences. And your nervous system, what happens in your nervous system is that you will go into the stress response, fight, flight, and freeze. So if someone, or you feel like someone, because even sometimes you may feel it, but it may not even be real, but many times it could be real. So both of those are possible. And what happens is you will go into that trigger reaction, that subconscious patterning that I talk about, the part of you, that subconscious mind, who has recorded everything from the moment you were conceived to present time, and all the limiting beliefs and all the emotions and all the trauma gets re-triggered. And so when you go into fight, you'll fight and you get aggressive. When you go into fleeing, you want to run, you want to hide, and then there is freeze. How many of you freeze. And freeze, I was just talking to a client earlier today, and she was talking about how in her relationship, once her partner goes into, I'll call her Suzanne, and once her partner goes into this anger and this rage, she freezes and she shuts down and she wants to speak, and she wants to say something, and she can't. And so when you have that fear of judgment or fear, it's you're having a fear reaction, you can easily go into one of those expressions. And the key is learning to discover more of what's underneath, what's under the cover. What's under the covers? What's under that anger or that freeze reaction? Okay. Okay, I see your question, Anastasia, and I'll get to it second. And so it's learning to understand what's been triggered. Let me get to Anastasia's question. How can we stop? Can't. So there's a few answers to that question. Thank you, Anastasia. One is that the subconscious that is automatic. You go on automatic. And when you're in automatic mode, you're not able to stop it if you're not aware of what's going on underneath. So that's why I said the first thing that needs to happen is for you to understand where is that fear coming from. So with Suzanne, I'll give you an example. When we started talking about it, I said, who does Evan remind you of? And she's like, she said, her first husband. I said, and who does he remind you of? Because there was a pattern that she kept attracting ragers in her life. Now, you can have ragers in your personal life. You can have rages in your business. Have you ever had experiences where at the job or in your business or as an entrepreneur, you've had clients who are ragers, or you've had coworkers, or you've had bosses that are ragers? So ragers can happen anywhere. And it's about learning how to calm yourself down, understand what's going on so that you can emotionally regulate. And we're going to talk more about emotional regulation too, because emotional regulation is key in being able to have clear communication. So yes, your subconscious will go on automatic. Now, two scenarios. One is if you haven't healed the reaction and you go into the automatic reaction of fight, flight, or freeze, you will instinctively, it's instinct. Animals have it, we have it. It's part of our survival mechanism. But here's the thing. I want you to know that you can change it. You can. But the first thing that needs to happen is that awareness. So, what is underneath that, let's say, freeze reaction? So, when I asked Suzanne again, what happens for her? And I said, who else besides your first husband, who else triggered you? And she knew from our work together that it was her mother. Her mother was a rager. And so she knew that what happens for her is when Evan starts screaming at her or getting angry at her, that fear reaction surfaces. And instead of being able to assert herself and speak her truth and be clear in her communication, she goes, she can't talk. She can't talk. And it's like, and I understand the freeze reaction. Like, I understand all of them because I've had them all. Most of us probably have in certain areas. So, and what she realized is that her mother was the culprit or the reason why she had that freeze reaction. And so I said to her, we're going to continue to work on it. So we will continue to work on it. And listen, I want you all to know that it's a journey. It's not a destination. That the journey of your healing, of your evolution, of your ability to communicate clearly and have an empowered voice and to communicate with confidence. I keep wanting to say conviction. Confidence, conviction, clarity, and compassion is possible, and it's a journey. So, okay. So, Misty asks, would you define rager for people, please? Thank you, Misty. Okay. So the way that I define a rager is someone, it's they have that reaction, that fear, or that they get really triggered. And let's say when you're a kid and maybe you spilled milk, like it's a normal thing, and instead of your parent or your mom, your dad saying, oh, let me clean it up, it's okay, it's okay, mistakes happen, your mother or your father starts screaming and yelling, what's wrong with you? Why can't you keep a glass together or whatever? And they go into the rage and the anger and the aggression. And with ragers are scary. Rages are scary because their rage is out of control and they feel scared. I've had relationships with ragers. And after the rage, the next day, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me, please. Because they have all this shame come up about the rage that they had. Those that are more aware, some of them, it's like, next day, whatever, or next rage. It depends on the parent or the caretaker or the person. So hopefully, Misty, that was clear. And if you need any more explanation, let me know. When you have that pattern and you feel like, okay, how am I ever going to change that pattern? And what happens is over time, as you heal that core wound, when you heal the core wound and you start working on it, I see, Mickey, that you have a question. I'll answer it shortly. And when you have the core wound, it's like I said, it's a journey and it's a process. But learning to heal that core wound, you begin to feel more empowered, more confident to express yourself. And I'm going to give you another example. I had talked about the Jenny and Jimmy. And Jenny also was a person that went into freeze, and Jimmy was a rager also and would react like that. And what happened as Jenny and Jimmy and I worked together, what happened was Jenny was able to start what we call emotional regulation. She was able to breathe and ground, and she was able to come back into alignment, into present time. and she was able to assert herself or speak her truth or take care of herself. So if Jimmy went into a rage, she would say, if you don't quiet down, I'm going to leave. And she had to leave at times. Now, what happened with Jimmy in his journey is he started understanding his rage and what was underneath, and he started learning new tools and techniques like the countdown, like, okay, I'm getting triggered right now by blah, blah, blah that Jenny just said. Breathe. And, and really, I want to remind you, self-talk. Self-talk is crucial because self-talk can help talk you out of that instant reaction. And the more aware and the more self-aware that you are, the more that you can learn to breathe and not react either in the rage or in the freeze or even in the flight, like, I'm out of here. Because you can't have healthy communication if both people aren't showing up. And so it's really important to learn the skills of that, being able to work on yourself and heal and understand those things. Now, Mickey said, why don't they control their rage? Okay, so what happens, Mickey, is over time, rage, like, remember I said it's the fear reaction. So you can either, and it's instinctive, and you can act aggressively, you can freeze, or you can flee, flight. And this is instinctual. And then what happens is there's generational patterns. So you will find that if you grew up in a family where there was a rager in the house, so if your mother was a rager or your father was a rager, and I've worked with people that had both, or a caretaker or a teacher, or there was somebody in your life where you were subjected to that rage. And most of the time it's a parent or a caretaker. But if you were continually subjected to the rage, or there was a real traumatic experience around it, you can very easily either become the rager yourself or attract ragers. And that's why people rage, because they don't know how to deal with their own anger. They feel powerless or out of control or whatever is going on for them. And I'm not making it okay, because rage is scary. And I've worked with people where rage became physically abusive, and there was physical abuse. Or rage could lead to, it could lead to hitting, fighting, hurting other people. And that's why whenever I talk about anger, I always say you want to be able to feel your anger and express your anger in healthy ways where you're not hurting yourself, someone else, or the environment. So that's what happens with rage. And so it's a generational pattern, and it continues through the generations until someone breaks the cycle. So that's why. So Misty, you should speak your truth so people can know for sure what is meant. Okay. So when I'm talking about speaking your truth, I'm talking about coming from a place of being authentic. I'm coming from a place where you're sharing, like when in healthy communication, and when you're expressing the power of your voice, and you want communication with confidence, conviction, clarity, and compassion, you are being able to express what your needs are, what your wants are. You're able to let the other person know in healthy communication that maybe what they did was upsetting or hurt you. I felt angry when you behaved like blah blah blah. And it's very important when in healthy communication to make sure that you're not blaming the other person, you're not viewing them, shaming them, because that only leads to unhealthy communication. But you're naming their behavior that was upsetting to you in a healthy way where you're owning your feelings and you're able to say, I'm feeling this, and this is really what I need from you. So in the case of a rager, and I will tell you because I personally dealt with it, I shared the last live show that my mother was a rager. So I'm very familiar with rage. And what happened is I attracted people in my life, romantic partners and friends who are ragers. And very often the thing where I talked about they felt shame and they would be so apologetic. And then I'd say, I really need you not to rage, but you can't tell that to a rager. They need to learn new coping skills. And this is really important, whether you're in fight, rage, or fighting or angry, aggression. And it may not go into rage, but you have that angry tone, or there's anger coming up for you. Or you're in that flight mode and you just want to flee out of there, or you're in freeze. And the more that you learn to be able to understand and help yourself and breathe and know that you can work through this, but you need new coping skills. You need new coping skills that will change those behaviors that are not comfortable. And that's what happened with Jenny and Jimmy, is both of them, as we worked together, they got new coping skills. And so what happened was their whole relationships started changing. They started becoming healthy communicators instead of unhealthy communicators. Now, here's the thing. I want you all to know, I'm not making any of you wrong. I want you to come into awareness of who you are and how you react in situations when you get triggered, because that reaction is crucial and key for you to work through what you need to be able to have the power of your voice, clear communication, and moving forward with that confidence, clarity, and compassion for yourself and for others. So, and so speaking your truth, getting back to Misty's question, speaking your truth is coming from that place of authenticity, coming from the place of what your truth is in a healthy, appropriate way. So like what I was talking about with healthy communication, I felt really hurt when you ignored my texts. I'll give you an example. Or I felt really sad when you weren't available for me. I felt sad and disappointed. And so that's healthy, clear communication. So that is shifting the energy. And hopefully that explains it. If you have any other pieces to that, or you want to, any other questions, let me know. That seems learned and also holding on to issues in life. I think, Misty, and I'm not sure because I know I was talking and I didn't see that other piece. So I think you're talking about what happens in the generational line with rage, or what happens because you will react from your own place of what you needed to feel safe in your life when you were growing up. And so it is learned. Yes, the rage. It is learned. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so it's definitely a generational pattern. And I want you all to know, whether you are the rager or you are the recipient of the rage, you can take care of yourself, you can empower yourself, and you can shift the behavior as you learn new healthy coping skills. So, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So, Anastasia asks, what if they don't show remorse after the rage? Okay, good question. They're all good questions. I mean, I really want to say thank you, all of you, for asking the questions. You know, I love your questions. So, if they don't show remorse, then you need to question. Well, if it's a personal relationship, you want to question, do you want this person in your life? Now, if it's a romantic partner or a friend, you have choice, because if they're not showing remorse and they don't care that they raged and hurt you, that's attacking. And that is something you need to look at. Do you want this person in your life? If they're a family, and this is all of it, what you can do if it's a family member or a boss or somebody else that you can't necessarily, and if it's a boss or somebody at work and you're at a job, then you want to be able, then you may want to get another job and work with somebody that's not that way, to take care of yourself. The bottom line is what's going to empower you and help you to take care of yourself. That's your priority, is for you to find a safe place. So if there's a rager and they're happening, what I do is I say, if they can't control themselves, and very often I will tell you from personal experience, once a rager is in the rage, very often they don't hear you. They can't hear you. And they don't know how to control themselves. And you need to take care of yourself so that you can. And that's why learning how to come out of freeze, and in this case, flight might be a good thing because it could be protective of what you need. But here's the thing with flight, if you want a healthy relationship, you want to be able to come back and communicate in healthy ways. Now, if a rager is not able to own their stuff, they may not be a healthy person to be in a healthy relationship with. And so you need to do what you need to do to take care of yourself, protect yourself, and leave the situation, or take a time out, or do what you need to do so that you are taking care of yourself. And I know that I kept repeating that, but that's safety, emotional safety, and physical safety. Physical safety and emotional safety is of the utmost importance, crucial, essential. So, and if they don't show that remorse, again, look at, is this somebody you really want to be in a relationship or be around? Now, if it's a family member, then you need to figure out how much you really want to be around them as well. I will tell you that through the years, what happened with me is, as I got older and I became an adult, and I learned to handle my emotions, and my relationship with my mother changed And the way she raged was not okay. And she didn't do that to me anymore. She knew that she couldn't do it anymore because I had become healthier. So still, it's about working through your own stuff to do that, to heal those issues. And if you are a rager or if you are in a relationship, what you want to look at is how do you heal those parts of you that were raged at when you were a child, and how scary that might have been, and learning to take care of that precious little girl or boy inside of you. And what happens is that as you heal yourself and as you get healthier and you start asserting yourself, not being aggressive back, because then when you're in aggressive back, you're in this power struggle. I mean, if you know about rage and then you start engaging them, see, one of the things I always say to clients, and I know I've said it on the show before, is if there's somebody who's raging, you want to disengage. You do not want to confront them because that will only escalate the situation. So you definitely want to leave the situation to take care of yourself and not escalate the situation. So hopefully. Okay, so what can you do? Well, fear of judgment, the fear. I want you to know fear can be rewired. And when I say rewired, remember I said the nervous system. What happens is your nervous system ends up being used to that trigger, that reaction. And so part of your healing, part of you, the learning experience, and I said new coping mechanisms, new coping strategies. So one of the things is to learn how to develop self-compassion. And here's that compassion. And what is compassion? Compassion is, it's kindness towards yourself. Compassion is trust. It's acceptance. And it's being able to love yourself even though you had an experience, or being able to love yourself through whatever's going on. And learning self-compassion is a huge healing tool and coping skill. And then, again, what I was talking about is you want to identify and heal core wounds around your fears, your fear of judgment, your fear of whatever, fear of success, your fear of visibility, your fear of being heard, because we're talking about communication. And you may have a fear of being heard because when you were growing up, you were shut down. It wasn't, and how many of you grew up in families, it's okay for children to be seen but not heard. And so you shut that down. So you want to be able to learn how to really heal those wounds. And sometimes you may need help. You may need help to do that. You may need a therapist or a coach, depending on what it is you're working on, to be able to heal those core wounds. And then you want to surround yourself with supportive people, creating a supportive community that's going to support you in your healing, in your journey. And I've been very grateful and blessed through my healing journey that I've always managed to find those healing communities. And I really want to support you to find a community that will help you, to support you in healing and becoming a better communicator and understanding yourself and understanding your issues more deeply. And what just popped for me is there's nonviolent communication. They have communities. There's a lot of healthier communities where you can find support to help you be healthier and have healthier communication. And then it's coming back to that authentic expression and being able to speak your truth, being able to allow yourself to express yourself in a real way. And hopefully you've created relationships where they can hear you and you can hear them and you can have a healthy relationship. That's what you want. And here's the thing, you may need help. You may need that counseling or coaching in order, either individually or together. For example, Jenny and Jimmy could not have gotten where they are if they did not have help. And the same thing with Suzanne. Suzanne wants to be healthier so that she doesn't have to freeze when Evan goes into the rage. And then at some point, she's gonna maybe talk to him about taking care of himself and getting the help he needs. All possibilities. All possibilities. So I just want to remind you that you can go to inspiredandempoweredliving.com/meditation for a meditation to clear your energy and to ground you and to help you get into a clearer state so that you can listen to the communication coming to you from the intuitive realm, from your intuition, and being able to then express that in healthy ways to the people in your life. So it's inspiredandempoweredliving.com/meditation, meditation. So the name of the show.com/meditation. And it also has a PDF if you don't like meditation. So you definitely want to download it and to really support you in moving forward on your path. And I'm going to talk about that clarity. If you want to communicate, but you're not clear, the communication will not come through clearly. And one of the first things, and I'm combining this, one of the first things that you want to do is to deal with your emotions. So you want to know, like, what are you reacting to? So are you reacting with the anger? Are you reacting with the fear? Are you reacting with sadness or grief or disappointment or frustration? Is learning to be able to get clear and get the clarity you need in order for you to be able to clearly communicate. And I'm also going to support you. If you are not clear, and sometimes what happens is you need to process what you need to process before you can clearly communicate. You take the time that you need to process your stuff, your issues, so that you can do it from a place of hopefully less emotion and really coming from that place of confidence, of clarity, and compassion. And that place is when you're in alignment. But in order to get into that alignment, you need to clear the energy so that you can speak with clarity. Now, when you want to have the clarity, you want to be able to reflect what triggered you, what's going on emotionally. Is this from, and usually it is from your past. They're reminding you of something that maybe your parents did or said, or a caretaker or a school teacher. All of that could be those triggers. And then you want to be able to ground yourself and feeling your breath, feeling your feet on the floor, being able to feel more in alignment. Then you can communicate. And when you're clear on your wants, on your needs, then you can, and your feelings, then you can communicate in a very clear way that hopefully the other person can hear. And people are more likely to hear you when you're coming from that space than when there's anger. When there's anger and both of you are angry, disengage. So, or even when you're in the fear reaction, you're not going to be able to express yourself clearly until you calm yourself down, you come back into present time. Because what has happened is you have gone back into the past, you've regressed. So you want to come back into present time and feel grounded and centered and connected. And then it's learning to practice, owning your voice, speaking your truth. You can practice with friends. That's why also a supportive support group or a supportive community can help you. I call it role playing, and you role play with somebody else, practicing what you want to say to the other person. And that can be a really effective technique, whether it's in your personal life or needing to say something to your boss or needing to say something to another person, a coworker, whatever it is, practice and find supportive people to practice with. And so really getting what is it and asking yourself, what do I want to say? What is it that I need or I'm feeling that I need to communicate to the other person? And when you are in that clarity space, you're ready. Now, hopefully, that other person is ready too. And then you can have a healthy conversation. Now, that emotional centeredness, being able to calm yourself down emotion, and I know I said it in the beginning, it's crucial, so important. And we're going to continue talking more about more things for inspired and empowered living. And so join us next Thursday at 5:00 p.m. on talk4tv.com, w4wn.com, and my YouTube channel. And you can also hear the podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora, Apple, Amazon, and many more. And so remember, you can shift your reactions, that you have the power to do that. And it's a journey of self-awareness and self-discovery and healing. And so I look forward to connecting with you next week. And I wish you all an inspired and empowered day and an inspired and empowered week. Have a great one, everybody. Bye for now.